Today we're going to talk about this very awkward topic of submission, something that does not come naturally to any of us. Submission is laying down the burden of always needing to be right. Some of you are these people, some of you know these people. I struggle with this because I am this person sometimes, and I struggle with other people that are these people. These people look like this. When I don't get my way, I get angry with you. My way's better than your way. So you should follow my way. And if you don't do what I say, I will destroy you. I'll argue with you. I'll fight with you until you see it my way. Is that a healthy approach to life? Some of us do this in our relationships. Often. With our friends, our family, our spouses. And we know how to push the buttons, don't we? Danielle and I were talking about this the other day. We both know how to push each other's buttons. If I think my way is better, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep pushing and pushing until I get my way, and then what am I going to do? If you still don't do it, I'm going to jab you. Well, what about when you did this? And we do this. We do this with people often. We don't think about them, we think about ourselves and being right. For some of you right now, how many of you are thinking, this is a little painful? Raise your hand. Is this a little bit painful? Submission. Yeah, it's awkward. It's rough. Some of us will stew because we didn't get our way. We'll sit there like children. In this children's class, I learned this. It's all about the heart. We talked about this. Chloe the other day said, have a happy heart. I thought that was so funny. We've adopted that at home. Happy heart. Isn't that what you told me? Happy heart? Yeah, happy heart. What a great idea. Some of us, when we don't get our way, we don't have happy hearts. I say this to Ashlyn all the time. We sit there and we do this. And sometimes we'll throw fits, won't we? We've moved past infantile throwing fits a little bit. We don't sit on the floor and kick and scream and throw things. Instead, we throw things at each other, or we act really angry, or we act, whatever, I'm above you. It's ugly. It's not of God. It's ugly. Submission teaches us to lay down the ugly burden of always having to be right, always having to get your way. Submission. I want to show you a scripture that I've enjoyed. It's from 1 Peter 2:18. Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also those who are harsh. So these people, we're told here, the writer of Peter, 1 Peter, he says, listen, when you have to be a slave, when you are a slave, don't just do things out of a grumbling attitude. TPS report. It says, do them in an honorable way. Learn to love that person that you work for. Can you imagine this? You begin to love that person that you work for, and actually, when they ask you to do something, you do it because you want them to succeed. That's really difficult sometimes. I want this person in this business to succeed, and I'm going to give everything I can to it to make it succeed because I have a heart that understands submission. I have a heart that says my heart is connected to God's heart, and He loves this person, and I will too. I may not agree with how they act, but I'm going to find ways in which to love this person and lift them up in prayer. When they succeed, I succeed. When they fail, I fail. Is this an easy concept to do in your life? It's the hardest thing in the world. But God calls us to it. Jesus is focused on the heart. In the Old Testament, the Levitical law said, basically, eye for an eye. Someone does you wrong, you can do right back to him. Then we have the 10 Commandments that come into play. And then Jesus steps up and he says, look, if you murder someone, that's really bad. But if you even consider in your mind murdering them, you've just committed murder. If you look at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery. It's all about your heart. And if your heart isn't right, you cannot be a servant of God. If your heart isn't right, messed up things happen. In churches, think about this. How many leaders do we have and people that participate in church or in work communities or whatever? They have a terrible heart. They're not there to serve. They just want their agenda. And what happens when this takes place? Destruction. It's ugly. May we be the kind of people that seek God's will, his heart, in everything we do. Learn to be a servant. And I'm preaching to myself because this happens every single day to me. I want my will. I want to be right. And I'll fight you. And then I have to step back and say, that's wrong. That's not of God. Why don't you be right? You be right. It's not the end of the world. The world isn't going to stop spinning. Submit. Let me give you more. Scripture calls us to be the kind of people that love vicious, toxic people. Scripture calls us to be the kind of people that don't talk about the vicious, toxic people. I'm terrible at this. Someone does me wrong. I want to talk about it. I want to be angry about it. I want to fester. I want to get the crowd together with our pitchforks. I'm going to bring you down. Scripture says, no. Humbly pray for that person. Love them. Be the kind of heart that God is calling you to be, the kind of people he needs, learning to submit to one another. When I submit, I learn to love you over my own need to be right. That's when powerful things begin to happen in our communities. Powerful things. People begin to interact in really powerful ways. I care more about your needs than my own desire of being right. When I understand I'm made in his image and loved, accepted, forgiven, I can look at you and say, here's another person that is loved, accepted, forgiven. If God can do that to you, I can do that as well. If my spouse makes me angry, I can turn to her. It's usually me getting her angry. But I can turn to them and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to listen to you. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to listen and accept what you have to say. That's so hard to do. Here's an interesting verse, Mark 8:34. I used to misread this when I was younger, but let me show you what this really means. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. I used to think taking up your cross meant you took on the ugly burdens of sin and you did what Jesus did and you walked through life groveling. Oh, woe is me. I'm carrying the cross though. I'm a happy heart. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He's saying this. You understand you're loved by the God of the universe. He sees crazy potential in you. You take up the burden of loving the unlovable. You take up the burden of denying your right to be right. You take up that burden and you say, Lord, may I treat those people lovingly, gracefully, and forgive them. That's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. And it is hard. People who understand self-denial are some of the most godly people I know. Jesus says greatness doesn't come from your success. It comes from God. Greatness comes when we can learn to lift others up. The people with a true heart, a servant heart, they serve because they love Jesus. They don't have to be on top and get accolades. It's none of that. Jesus turns the concept of the rabbi totally upside down. He says, if you want to be a rabbi, a leader, then first be a servant. Here's some practices I want you to consider this week. Submission. Every day this week, I want you to practice this. When you wake up in the morning, I want you to say to God, this God of the universe that loves you, say, Lord, I want to surrender my day, my baggage, my work, my boss, whatever it is. I want to surrender that to you today. And when it pops up in my mind to take control, remind me that you are in control and I am called to love this fool. That's different. It's beautiful. Another thing I want you to think about, submit your time in study to God. You want to know Jesus? Well, Spend time with him. Spend time reading about him. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are powerful books of the Bible. They're the stories of Jesus. You want to get to know Jesus? Spend time in his word. Devote 10 minutes studying who he is. Time is one of the most valuable commodities in our culture today. Give him some time. Submit that to him. I know it's very important that you check Facebook when you awake immediately out of bed. Pull out that Bible. Read a little bit about who Jesus is. It'll transform you. Look for opportunities to listen to others. I'm finding this is a beautiful practice. When I can stop and say, okay, God, lead me to someone that needs to be listened to. Let me take on their burdens for a little while. Don't keep inserting well, you should be doing this. It's so easy to give advice, isn't it? And then you realize that you look back at yourself and you think, well, I haven't followed half of that. Listen to someone else's burdens for just a few minutes. Try not to throw out advice at them, but just listen. The last thing I want you to think about doing this week, find ways in which you can serve people. Every week, I took Ashlyn to the homeless shelter when I was in Washington, and we would serve. And at first, I walked in thinking, I'm the man, I'm a good person. But then I realized something. These people and I were the same. I had an opportunity to serve someone else. And we began a friendship. It was beautiful. Let me end with this. The God of the cross teaches us how to submit. God, Jesus Christ on the cross, teaches us what true submission looks like. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't beat off all of these people crucifying him. On the cross, he's hanging there, being killed by a political and religious system, an evil political and religious system. And there on the cross, Jesus says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive them. And he acts as the Father acts. And he says, Jesus says, may your will be done. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. May your peace be here among us. May we learn to love each other like Jesus did there on the cross. When we're being crucified, when we're being yelled at, when we want to fight back, may we learn to love those around us. When we're arguing with our spouses, may we stop and say, I value you more than being right. Love wins when it loses. I'll say that again. Love wins when it loses. Love wins when it allows others to be lifted up. Love wins when we begin to desire others' fulfillment, others being lifted up than ourselves. May we begin to be okay with being second, third, or even last. May we allow love to win. True submission comes when I understand the God on the cross. May we be the kind of people that stop focusing on ourselves and start focusing on Christ. May we be the kind of people that learn to submit to one another and think of others over ourselves because we understand we are loved and accepted by the God of the universe. Being right is not that important. Being the embodiment of love is. May we be those kind of people this week, submitting to one another. Not always having to be right, but always seeking to show love. Stand with me as we sing this last song.